Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we are talking about Beef Season 2. Now, Beef is now an anthology series. So we had that overall fantastic Beef Season 1 that came out a couple of years ago, dealing with a sprawling rivalry between two road ragers. And in this season, we are dealing with two beefing couples and watching as a beef between these two couples kind of unravel and watching as it kind of permeates around them and affects everyone around them. Now, I will say, I think this is one of the best looking shows we've got in a while, ever since basically Beef Season 1. This looks absolutely stunning. It also sounds incredible. We have Phineas, Billie Eilish's brother, on the score. And going into this, I was really excited. I love the cast here. Oscar Isaac, an incredible actor. Carey Mulligan, an incredible actor. Cailee Spaeny, one of our great upcoming actresses. If you haven't seen Priscilla, please do. And also Charles Melton, who I thought was absolutely phenomenal in May, December. So I love the cast. I love the setting. I quite enjoyed Beef Season 1, minus some gripes with the last couple of episodes. And in the first 6 episodes of this show, I thought I was watching an all-time absolutely flawless show. Like, I thought this was absolutely flawless. Now, I will say for the last 2 episodes, it does slightly lose its way here and there, but I do implore you to stick with it, because despite it sort of losing its way and sort of losing its really tight storytelling that it gives you for the first 6 episodes, it somehow brings it back at the end. Like, I was sitting there, I was like, oh, you're losing me a bit. I don't know if you can pull this back in. And then all of a sudden they do. So I'm really excited to talk about this in a spoiler-free capacity. And then once I do the spoiler-free review, we will get into a spoiler-filled discussion where I'll go through every single episode. But yes, going into this, I was excited. I love the Barry Lyndon font choice. I thought that was a really inspired title choice, and the way they were kind of framing it like Barry Lyndon. I mean, Barry Lyndon, if you've seen it, is like the ultimate ridiculous beef, you know? It's just men being petty for violence and power and wealth, you know? So it kind of does translate to what we're watching here. The core focus of this show is highlighting the differences between generation and how both of these generations are victims under capitalism, right? Like, we're exploring these two different couples who initially you might be geared against the couple of Oscar Isaac and Carey Mulligan, but as you get to know them, you get more depth and more insight. And as you get to know our naive couple and you see them kind of morph and contort and kind of morally debase themselves throughout the season, it becomes a lot more layered and textured with its characterization. The opening moments of meeting the couple of Ash and Austin, played by Cailee Spaeny and Charles Melton, you're seeing there seeing a very beautiful, young, naive love. But as you start to unpack this naivety starts to be replaced with something more sinister, sort of almost weaponized incompetence, this intentional sort of like obfuscation of clear dynamics, you know? There are multiple points in this show where it starts taking sort of plot lines you've seen in similar movies. There are sort of vague plot points from Barry Lyndon, from Parasite, that come into this, but it never feels like it's ripping it off. Instead, it feels like this really interesting sort of like recontextualization of these ideas, you know? There are plot lines where it really does feel sort of parasite-y in terms of like, you know, cheating your way into job and skipping the systemic limitations that'll stop you from doing that. But the way it kind of subverts what Parasite did in this show is super fascinating. And I really like the way it almost highlights the differences between Korea and America in the way these sort of plot lines go and divulge. And I just need to stress, the first 6 episodes are maybe some of the best TV I've seen in quite some time. Like, I cannot remember when I saw a better 6-episode run. Like, this was phenomenal. Particularly, I thought episode 4 was really quite striking. It was almost this surreal trip to the hospital. I absolutely loved episode 4. What I really like about this show too is there are a lot of situations that you can't quite put your finger on straight away. You know, there are moments where I'm like, okay, is that character misreading something, or do they have the correct end of the stick here? Are they being dramatic, or is that person actually fucking with them? Mainly interactions with Ashley and other characters. She's this character that reads too much into things at times and kind of misjudges people at times, but at the same time, sometimes you're like, no, I'd be thinking that too. Particularly, there are some interactions between Ashley, played by Cailee Spaeny, and Josh, played by Oscar Isaac, where you're like, oh, you think you know him, and maybe he is like that, but also maybe he isn't like that, and you as an audience will judge him and then misjudge him, and it's really well done. And I do want to highlight, I think Carey Mulligan is absolutely on fire in this show. All of them are on fire. We're also introduced to a batch of Korean characters, notably Chairwoman Park, played by Yoon Yoo-jung from Minari, and that was absolutely great to see. A nice little sort of meta reference, right, because she was the grandma to Steven Yeun in Minari. And we've also got Dr. Kim, played by Song Kang-ho, who you'll know from Parasite, JSA, The Host, Snowpiercer. He's an absolutely wonderful actor. So seeing them pop up as well was really exciting. Now, if I have any sort of reservations about this show. It really is just in the last 2 episodes where I feel like it sort of gets away from itself. And I actually found this happened in season 1 too. And on one end, I appreciate them trying to raise the stakes and really go big or go home. But there were points in the last couple episodes where I was like, I was kind of missing the interpersonal, messy, intimate character study and character drama that we were having at the start. It feels like it's losing its way a little. But again, similar to season 1, the way it kind of throws these characters into these crazy situations to then bring it back down to earth, bring it back to like the raw materials of humanity. Both seasons have managed to sort of jump the shark and lose me for a little and then still bring me back at the end. You know, if you've seen season 1, it really goes for it. And there's some characters in season 1 that you don't have a great grip on, but they're having big impact on the plot and you're like, whatever. But then when you get to that last episode and it's the bottle episode between the 2 characters, you're right back in it. And similarly in this season, it lost me for a bit. And then by the end, I was like, oh, this is really working emotionally for me. So overall, I'm feeling like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. If you have not seen this show, season 2 in particular, please do watch it. I think both of them are really going to be argued about which one is better. But I really thought this was quite striking TV. Visually, sonically, character-wise, acting-wise, I thought it was all cooking. And thankfully, we have a Netflix show that when it's shot at night, it actually looks good. It's not completely washed out or you can't see anything. The show always looks consistently great. We have these fantastic title cards throughout. Now, in order to get into the plot anymore, because I don't really want to spoil too much, all right? I don't want to spoil too much. I want you to go into this blind. The essential setup here is that the young couple starts blackmailing the older couple, played by Oscar Isaac and Kaylee Spaney, for kind of greater job prospects and money. And then from there, it kind of like escalates, right? But that's really all you need to know going into it. I don't think you should know much more. Absolutely go watch it. Get back to me in the comments and come back to this video when you've watched it for the full spoiler breakdown discussion, because we've got a lot to talk about. I've got a lot of notes. I might flash them up here because it just keeps going and going, but we're going to get into everything. So 3, 2, 1, spoilers. Now, just quickly, everyone, if you're enjoying this video, please consider getting a membership to this channel. For the cost of a couple of dollars a month, you get access to a weekly podcast where I talk about every single show and movie I've watched, whether it's at the cinemas, off the shelf behind me, stuff off streaming, basically anything I don't get time to cover on the main channel, I cover in these podcasts. It's a really good way to give back, and I think it gives a lot of entertainment for you guys. Again, links to both YouTube membership or Patreon, if you prefer, are in the description below. Thank you so much for considering, and let's get into spoilers for Beef Season 2. So episode 1, it opens with ants getting squashed. We notice throughout this series there is a big focus, and in the marketing there's a big focus on ants, all right? Worker ants, ants working in colonies. We'll substantiate and flesh that out as we go, but like you notice ants kind of invading everyone's houses at different levels of wealth as they start to slide down into this sort of like rat race, right? Now we open with a very important scene for later. It's this Save the Cross fundraiser thing. So we quickly learn that Josh and Lindsay are kind of running this country club. They're hosting a fundraiser. Meanwhile, the young couple, Austin and Ashley, are working at the country club. We're contrasting the two couples. We see that Josh and Lindsay are fighting. All of their fights throughout the show are absolutely wonderful and very down to earth and real. Like you hear both of their perspectives, and whenever one of them is talking, you're like, oh, kind of good points, oh, kind of good points. Well, if that's true, that's a good point. But if that's true, that's a good point. Really, really well conceived, well written arguments between them. So we're bouncing from them kind of arguing over missed birthdays to the young couple, Austin and Ashley, and we see that, you know, they've got an engagement ring. We see that she's got an engagement ring. They're all loved up. Like, they couldn't be more loved up, right? We also get the sense very early on that Austin is very overly polite. And at the start, I actually thought his politeness was really earnest and really sweet, and he was just kind of naive. He initially came off to me as like kind of a Coen Brothers character, you know, someone who's almost too sweet and too simple for their own good. But as the show goes on, you start to kind of unpack that a lot of this is performative. A lot of this is kind of toxic, and there is something interesting and more deceitful brewing underneath with him. I actually found him a bit more despicable than Nikki in Something Very Bad Is Going to Happen. This guy rubbed me the wrong way, but not at first. At first I was like, oh, this is just like earnestly like a really, really soft guy. And I thought they were kind of getting at the differences between the generations, because you notice the younger couple is almost naive in the way they see the world. And yeah, really well done at first. But there's this great moment where he gets cut off by a car, and instead of beeping, he's like, I'm sorry, you go. And instead of like the road rage in season 1, right, they have this overly polite, no, you go, no, you go. Really good. Like nice little, this is like a tasteful reference, you know? So we find out, it seems like Oscar Isaac, it seems like Josh has spent the inheritance of his wife on like the business. They haven't had sex for a year. You know, she says, oh, well, we haven't even had sex for a year. He says it's 11 months. Like, they keep getting caught on semantics. Again, really well-written fight scene. And there's a point where they're, like, bashing things, and she's, like, throwing and smashing wine. She actually goes for the golf club, and he grabs it. It's really reminding me of that incredible fight sequence in The Sopranos, if you guys have seen that very famous episode where Tony and his wife really have it out, where you're like, oh, my God. But in saying that, like, I don't know about you guys, I was kind of laughing with this fight. Now, what this show does really well with this fight scene is when you see it out of context, and even in context, but when you see the out of context video clip that Ashley and Austin take of them, it looks fucking terrible. It looks so bad. And it's not good seeing it from the start, but when you watch it from the start, you kind of get lulled into it. You're like, okay, she went for the golf club, he took it off her, he's kind of being like, just get back, stop, all right? But again, when you see the video, you're like, oh my God. Like, you almost get swept up in the argument and in who's right and who's wrong. And then when you step out of it, you're like, Jesus, you know? So really well done. So the young couple have gone over to drop off a wallet, right? And then they kind of get nosy, and they go over to the fight in the garage, and the fucking young one starts recording them fighting. Now, on one end, maybe if you want to be charitable, she was doing this because she earnestly was like worried a domestic was gonna like fully unfold and want to catch it on camera. But like, I think she had the idea from the jump to hold this against them and blackmail them. You get what I mean? Now, actually, I'll throw that out to you guys. Do you think when she was filming initially, she was filming just because it's that typical Gen Z thing to do when you see something going wrong, just like record and panic to record and like, I'll have evidence for later? Or was she cooking up something in that moment? Because it seems like she had this idea very quickly, but let me know how it feels, because I don't know, I just thought it was wildly inappropriate. Now, to be fair, they haven't seen the build up to the fight that we've seen, but I was sort of seeing there being like, this feels seedy from the jump, you know? Now we cut back to the car, and they're in the car, and they're kind of just like gassing each other up. The young couple is seen there being like, I love how your brain works. No, I love how your brain works. You know, he's seen there being like, if I ever raise my voice at you, I hope there's someone recording it. You know, I hope there's someone to call me out. And I do love that the older couple has kind of cooled off, and they're somewhat relatively back to normal. Like, they're both uniting over the fact of like, why would they have come to our door? Why would they have been standing there like that? That's so bizarre. That's so bizarre. It's a really funny moment where it's like, they've almost blown off this steam and they're coming back down to earth. And we'll see that rhythm with this couple throughout the show. And I'm not saying the relationship they have is good or perfect, but I do think there is truth to what Lindsay says later in either episode 1 or episode 2, where she says, look, couples do fight, and the couples that don't are often brewing on something, you know? Like, I do think, now obviously you shouldn't fight to that point where you're holding golf clubs at each other, but at the same time, it is kind of this humorous moment where they've cooled off from that and been like, damn, that's crazy. What the fuck were they doing there filming us? And they seem more united after a fight, which is kind of an important thing. You will see this couple be tested throughout the season, and after every test, they seem a little more united for a moment. It seems to be almost the rhythm of this couple. Now, I absolutely love when Josh starts giving a speech to all the employees, and in my opinion, I don't think he was trying to be threatening. I get how in that moment she sees it as threatening, but I didn't think at that point he was really super worried, like, oh yeah, she's really going to hold this video over me. I think he was giving a general speech. You see how Ashley is kind of like hyperfixating and, you know, texting Austin and being like, oh my God, he's definitely fucking with me. He's definitely coming for me. And at the end of the day, like, to me, it landed as simply just, hey, get off your phone. Like, yes, obviously he knows that she was there and filming, but at that point I was like, I get why she's worried, but also I was like, damn, she's really like jumping to conclusions here. You know, she's texting Austin being like, he walked off. It's total mind games. Now, I will say when he comes up and asks for the bear claw, I think he asks it completely normally. And then he does offer her some money. And like, yes, on one end, we can sit here and be like, oh my God, a boss shouldn't be doing that. But I don't know, like, let's be like real world adults. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it's obviously scary after you saw him holding a golf club. And there's a lot of moments between these characters where you're like, I wish you guys would just kind of like communicate, you know, like he could have communicated like, look, like I was actually taking the golf club off her. I get how it looked. And similarly, there's a scene later in the show where you're like, oh my God, I wish Ashley would just say like the actual injury she's dealing with in the hospital. But that's kind of a lot of the core of this. These are two couples that could have been more united in their fight against, you know, the man, the powers that be essentially. But instead they're kind of like miscommunicating consistently and don't really want to understand each other. But yeah, this moment where he comes up with the bear claw, offers her some money, I didn't think it was that bad. We then see Austin being almost overly nice about someone canceling on his like fitness class or whatever. And that's a big thing with Austin is he's overly nice to people. He's overly nice to everyone. And he kind of stops doing that with Ashley, but he'll performatively do it with everyone else. It's like this like urge. But then you do see him try to bring a bug back to life when no one's watching. Like that's not performative. It's a really sweet thing. And it's like maybe what we're watching with Austin is someone who had genuine sweet intentions at the start of the show being morphed and mutilated. I do think that's kind of what happens. I think he gets a taste for it when they blackmail the couple, and then he kind of goes on this moral downward shift. And it's one of the better character arcs I've seen in recent memory. I love all the text conversations between them. They're hilarious. He comes off like a genuine numpty. You know, he really does feel like a Coen Brothers character in the early episodes. Now, Austin goes to talk to Lindsay, and this is what I really like. It shows that this younger couple are stepping into a dynamic that they don't understand. And again, like it isn't the most healthy dynamic, all right? But at the same time, couples argue, all right? Maybe not to that extent, but this naive couple is kind of like stepping on stuff they shouldn't, right? They walk in and they're like, hey, my fiance and I, we're a safe space, Lindsay. Like if you need to get out, we can get you out from your sick husband. And yeah, I will say it's interesting. I think he exacerbated that whole conversation verbally, but I do think she was the one that was exacerbating it physically. And then Lindsay says, oh, you've been going out for a year and a half. You have a good fight coming. And this almost feels like a monkey paw curl moment. You know, you're kind of sitting there waiting throughout the season for this to snap back. Lindsay then says the quote of couples that fight last, couples that don't hide something, and he seems genuinely scared. He seems really terrified of this. We then have that scene where Josh asks for the bear claw and offers her some money. I will say I think Kaylee is absolutely wonderful in this scene. But again, it's a moment where I think she's reading a little too much into it. She's taking him as a little too threatening in this moment. Josh is manipulative and he is snaky throughout the season, but I will say I think he was genuinely just trying to be like, look, here's some money. I'm sorry you had to see that. Please delete the video if you can. I mean, whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, I think he would have had every right to ask her to delete the video without offering her money. Like, I don't know, man. Like, you see Ashley really start spiraling from this. He mentions that he's not happy that Austin has gone to their house to talk to Lindsay, which I kind of agree. Like, crazy. Now, I will say, we then have the scene where Ashley is watching the video back and, like, just seeing the video itself, you're like, this is so bad. Like, it does look terrible. I really love the moment where after Ashley is experiencing some pain, she goes to the doctors and she kind of naively says, this is where we're starting to watch her kind of, like, go on this sort of, like, Gen Z shift, essentially, right? Like, this sort of naivety is being tested. She sits there. Now, I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it's her that says this. It's not Austin, is it? But she says, do you know whales can experience mental illness? And then he comes in, the doctor comes in and he's like, you have an ovarian cyst. And kind of just like really coldly outlines how awful this is going to be. And I will say I've seen a lot of scenes that try and handle how kind of like clumsy medical staff can be, how cold they can be, what a polarizing experience this can be for women. And oftentimes it's like I get the messaging, but sometimes it can feel a little overridden. I thought this was like perfectly executed. Like you kind of saw the child inside her kind of like die by how cold this like doctor was being. I thought it was a really well done scene. And this show often throughout this season has just like so many like all-timer great, like that's how you do it sort of scenes. I also love the moment where Ashley calls her dad after learning about the ovarian cyst and he's too busy watching football and he's kind of like, hey, like I'm just watching the football. And then Ashley downplays what she's going through and says she just has an upset stomach. There's also this great little blink and you miss it moment where Josh imagines himself when he's talking up to this high up guest. I think what that's getting at is obviously Josh would like to be the guest. He doesn't want to be working for the country club. He wants to be one of the people at the country club who isn't working, who's just having a great time, you know, and just being able to live off passive income. I know a bunch of you are going to be like, the dog wants to get off. Someone just got home. She heard it. That's all. I've put the dog down. Don't harass me. Next, we have a scene where Austin and Ashley are having sex and the cyst clearly hurts, but she's not ready to tell him yet. She's obviously worried. If I remember correctly, I don't think Austin knows about the cyst at this point, and she starts insisting that he finishes inside her, right? Obviously because she now has pregnancy as a priority in case this cyst gets any worse, which I will say, like, maybe worth a discussion to having. I think you should discuss that beforehand, but whatever. We then cut to Josh, who's in this like repetitive cycle of watching OnlyFans, beating to it, and then trying to improve his life the moment he finishes. You know, he then always goes for a jog and listens to a self-help podcast after doing this. We see this about 2 or 3 times throughout the show. We also see Lindsay is super flirty with guys. She's flirty with Whoosh. She's flirty with this guy Desmond, who I think it's either communicated that she used to date or it was a surrealistic moment where she was just imagining what they would be like together online as a couple. Let me know how you interpreted it. Now that the show is done, I'm leaning more towards a surreal imagination of this is what me and Desmond would look like on internet results, but could go the other way. We also have a really nice subtle storytelling moment where we see that there are baby clothes with the tag still on, so we know something happened to a baby. We don't know if it was a miscarriage or a child died, but it's set up there, right? And really well, might I add. I also love the moment, very grounded. What I will say, all these characters feel really lived in. It feels like it's either written by people that are around the same age or people that are really in tune with people around these age. But I mean, I'm around the same age as Austin, and like him sitting there searching up his problems on Reddit and just getting the worst advice ever is such a like lived in textured thing, you know? So he's sitting there being like, yo, I just had weird sex. And everyone's like, she's definitely cheating, bro. She's definitely cheating. And a lot of this season is about like outside influence, you know, and like the way it permeates your brain and makes you do stupid things. Then he searches, my parents never fought with one another, but my mother used to hit me, obviously implying that the mum had issues with her husband, but she would then take it out on Austin, which we can assume he will then do and pass down to the kid because Austin is very much wired the same way, bottling everything in and pretending everything's fine. Now, Ashley now opens up to Austin and talks about how she can't do what she was put on this planet to do. She can't do what nature is all about. She can't give birth, right? Austin then gives this weird capitalism rant where it's like he doesn't really know what he's talking about. He's just kind of finding someone to be mad at and someone to blame, and like, yes, capitalism is bad, but he's very like Gen Z-ified, you know what I mean? Like but he's very like naive about it. You know, he's sort of just saying buzzwords and kind of half knows what he's talking about. And he's clearly trying to find someone to blame and someone to pin it on and someone to get like upset about. And you can see both of them are kind of like looking at each other in this conversation being like, what are you on about? You know, Austin starts seeing there being like, sometimes I feel like a failure, but it's actually just all these old guys, they're getting in my way. It's like, no, you probably need to work on yourself, dude. Like it's probably not that. He then says, we wouldn't be in this mess if I wasn't picking up balls. And it's like, wouldn't you? Are you sure? And then they both kind of eventually stumble into agreeing to blackmail Josh and Lindsay for money, which is fine. But you can then see they're trying to add this like moral virtue to it where they're like, yeah, let's go fuck over this abuser. Like that's what he deserves. And it's like, do you actually care about that? And it's fine. Like there's a relatively noble reason. If you're ever going to blackmail someone, like having like a cyst and needing money for healthcare, like that's about as noble as any reasons are going to get, you know? So it's like, sure, but like, let's not pretend we're like good people about it. And that's kind of how they frame it. That's the end of episode 1, a fantastic first episode, and you kind of know what we're gearing up for. It's great. All right, so episode 2 opens with the negotiation. I love this quote from Austin where he says to Joshua and Lindsay, he says, as you guys know, you know, she's been very useful to your company for years. And then Lindsay comes back with like, there's literally no reason we would know that. Austin then starts out loud wondering whether there's better opportunities for Ashley. And then Josh cuts in and says, well, she's never graduated, so this position actually makes sense. And this is a really interesting exploration. This is where it kind of differentiates itself from Parasite. In Parasite, kind of the point was skipping around these qualifications showed that these family members were actually kind of good at the services and the jobs they were providing to the family in Parasite. Whereas in this show, I think one of the greatest subversions, one I love is the fact that Ashley is actually kind of rubbish at her job that she like kind of like blackmails them to get. Same with Austin and his physiotherapy. It's not just something they can teach themselves quickly. They are actively terrible at what they do. And like Josh and Lindsay are incredibly standoffish here, but fair enough. You get what I mean? And I will say the way Austin and Ashley are intimidating them kind of means that like the way she was really intimidated by Josh earlier in the show holds less water. You get what I mean? Like, yes, okay, it was a bit uncomfortable that your boss tried to bribe you, but at the same time, it's like you're now playing the same sort of games. So it's like, whatever. It feels like to me what the end of the show is sort of getting at, and the journey we go on is watching as Ashley and Austin kind of become their own mutilated version of Josh and Lindsay, and almost worse to an extent, but we'll get there when we get there. So Joshua then offers Ashley a position of $45K a year, I think it was, or it was a $45K lump sum. I assume it was $45K a year, 10 days pay vacation, as well as health insurance, which she's obviously excited about. Now, in the car afterwards, it's really interesting because on one end, you could read the scene as Austin having a bit more of a come to Jesus, heartfelt moment where he's like, reasoning within himself and wondering whether they did the right thing. But Ashley starts being a little like, maybe I'll get these moles checked. Maybe I'll do this. She's starting to having fun with it. You know, the sort of noble reasons or understandable reasons of the cyst she had seems to be secondary to what else can I do with this money they've given me. And on one end, it seems like maybe he's being morally virtuous here, but at the same time, it seems like more to the point, he's actually just jealous. You know, initially you're like, oh, okay, maybe he's sort of a bit put off by how much fun she's having here. But then quickly we realize, no, he's kind of just jealous, because then he starts saying like, oh, what about me? What can I get? I thought Austin, this is where he started getting a little weird. I think in the first episode, Austin, there was some pure sweet things about him, but we watch as quickly the idea and the prospect of money starts to mutilate him really quickly. You know, he feels jealous and petty, and it's like he didn't want or expect any of these things before, but now that Ashley is getting it, he wants a piece as well. He says, I wonder if we could have got them to do stuff for me, which is like really slimy at this point, because he wasn't brave enough to do the hard work himself in that negotiation scene. Ashley had to, and now he's sitting there being like, what about me? Josh says they're not going to delete that video. They're going to keep blackmailing us, which I think is an understandable thought. Like, I would be thinking that too. I'd be like, this is just the beginning. Lindsay seconds this and goes, you know what? What if you just quit your job, Josh? And we find out why Josh can't quit his job very shortly. He's in tons and tons of debt. But I will say Lindsay came off incredibly supportive here. And I do think there's an element of like, if Josh took his foot off the gas, there would be potential for Lindsay and Josh to reconnect. It does seem like work and stuff is going the way. But in saying that, I think there is some truth to the fact that she's sort of like with what she wants from the bed and breakfast has exacerbated the things, but at the same time he's absolutely terrible with finances, clearly. So it's like, but I will say I think Lindsay comes off as a very supportive partner here and as a tempting prospect. And you know, when she's sitting there saying, you know, we can have time to actually enjoy life, enjoy things, and he's clearly not like giving it any thought, but it's like, it's a sweet offer. Now, Ashley moves into her new office and, you know, she starts texting Austin saying like, once we get married, you can be my dependent on the health insurance. And you can see he's already getting a little intimidated. He's getting a bit of that like typical sort of macho thing of like, oh, now she's the breadwinner and I feel really shitty and insecure, you know? And what I really like here, what I really, really love here is you start to see Ashley have some sort of empathy and understanding for Josh occasionally. She's in the office across from Josh, and this really interesting dynamic begins to open up where Ashley wants to actually be respected and be like a loyal coworker or a loyal, you know, a loyal underling to Joshua. She wants the respect of Joshua in a corporate capacity, whereas he has no respect for her. He's like, okay, this is just some dingaling that I've given a job to because they blackmailed me. And frankly, like rightfully so. She is quite bad at her job and he uses that to his advantage. But it's this really interesting moment where I think she's really trying to actually earnestly be a good worker. And he's seen there being like, okay, what else are you trying to get from me? It's a really well set up dynamic. And this and Josh starts to fear the worst potential outcome with Ashley the same way later on in the season Ashley starts to fear the worst from Josh, and it's this sort of like snake eating itself between the two of them. You know, she doesn't actually seem to care about the video and actually cares about the job. You know, he starts asking about, did you delete the video? And she's like, oh yeah, don't even worry about that. Now he reads this as sort of a flippant, manipulative disregard where it's like, don't worry, I've got it. But like in reality, I don't think she has it. I don't think she's like playing with him at all. But it's like, you can't blame him for thinking that, you know? She's trying to genuinely now have a career here, but it's like he's seen that being like, what the hell? So yeah, the struggle is he wants her to delete the video and he thinks he has to keep placating her to do that, whereas she actually just wants to work and be treated like a worker. Now, Austin and Ashley start beefing again. It is exploring that dynamic of when the sort of woman becomes the main breadwinner and the guy instantly gets sort of like insecure. She's asking him to go get clothes and he's like, no, I've got stuff. And she's like, there's nothing in the calendar. It's really well written. And I will say at this point, this is when Austin started to become the most fuckable, unfuckable guy ever. Like a very good looking guy, Charles Melton, right? Like very insane physique, but at the same time, like the personality shift he's going through here was so unlikable. I thought he was so irritating. I do also like this reveal that this Whoosh guy is actually flirting with all the women at the country club trying to sell them skincare products. And Lindsay kind of learns that she's just one of many being kind of duped. She's not special. And then as kind of like petty revenge, Lindsay gets all the tennis girls to start harassing Ashley for help. I do also really like this subtle scene. Well, not subtle, you know what it's doing, but where this like woman that was clearly more qualified for the job starts asking Ashley questions about her qualifications, and Ashley freaks out. It's a good way of showing that very quickly Ashley and Austin have become part of the system that they were trying to critique very shallowly earlier in the other episode, right? When they were sitting there being like, oh, it's just capitalism, it's corporate greed and the men punishing us. And now they've like climbed the ladder of like privilege and covert deals, and they're like genuinely taking jobs from people that deserve it more. It's really well written stuff. At this point, they're really not that far off from Josh and Lindsay, and we watched that throughout the season. I do also love the moment where Josh describes Ashley as an idiot and says that all of the stuff she's done is wrong. We find out Josh has serious debt and money trouble through the sister's phone call. I also love this moment where after she's editing like crow's feet out of her photos, Carey Mulligan, Lindsay is walking around and she's flirting with this whoosh guy. And even though he's the tennis instructor, she's the one picking up all the balls. It's a really nice little moment of visual storytelling. In another great moment, after being humbled in the earlier scene where she finds out she's one of many, she tries to get a bigger discount because that way she can feel like she's more valued and more pretty in the eyes of the whoosh guy. Now, Lindsay actually starts blackmailing Whoosh, saying he's sexually harassing all the women at the country club because she wants free like cosmetic surgery. We see a rift forming between Austin and Ashley as he starts filming videos and feels like she isn't showing proper interest in the videos and she's becoming more important at work. Really well explored, really well set up. Again, very lived in, very well explored. Then we find out that he went to Goodwill. All right, he went to Goodwill and got a bunch of Goodwill clothes because he didn't feel good buying stuff from H&M to keep the tags on, then returning. It's like, you just went through insane blackmail. Like, is that really the reason, or are you trying to hold her back? Like, be so for real. And what's beautiful about Ashley, I found in this show, we kind of watch as Ashley gets a little better as the season goes on up until kind of the ending. And we watch as Austin kind of goes on a downward spiral. I found I did have a fair bit of Ashley here and there throughout the show, despite certain things she was doing, whereas Austin, I found, continuously kind of got worse. But in a really interesting moment later, she does earnestly wear these Goodwill clothes, you know, despite being a little like, what was that about? Like, she does take it with a good grace. It's a sweet moment. Now, at this point, we start seeing that the ants are invading the hotel. We see ants throughout this season invade kind of all their like surroundings. I think it's trying to get at this idea that they're ignoring the actual problems. They're ignoring their own moral degradation. Like, they're starting to rot at the core, so ants are entering their space, you know, like, I think it's good. And even on just like a visual storytelling level, it's literally as simple as they're not putting effort into the things they should be putting in, and they're not noticing that they have ant infestations. We have some rogue Benny Blanco and Michael Phelps montages where, in another great moment of storytelling where we see that Josh is trying to fit into a world that doesn't really accept him, he joins in this sort of like gambling thing where they playing with $5,000 the way maybe you and I would play with like, say, $5, $10, at most $50, and he loses $5,000. And for him, that means he needs to sell all these personal goods of his that he's valued for years. Really well written moment, and he's obviously expecting Michael Phelps to not chase him about it, and Michael Phelps is like, no, I'll give you a couple days, you know, I don't care if they'll overdraw a limit, just give it a couple days, I'll wait. Then he goes to sell some of his stuff, and the guy really wants to buy the music stuff. It's actually kind of a sad scene. I felt for Josh a little here. Watching some guy that clearly had creative potential and could have gone down a different route, get addicted to kind of the rat race and get addicted to money. Now he's in tons of debt, and like, for what? You know, like, look at him now. Next, Ashley tries to get Austin a job and starts emphasizing the fact that he's half Korean. Describes him as a physical therapist as well. This is the sort of plot line that reminded me a lot of Parasite, but again, what they do with it I found really interesting, and I'm really glad it didn't just bite Parasite. It became its own interesting, weird, distorted take on it. Now, when Ashley gets home, she reframes this hiring as a lot more earnest and genuine and organic. You know, like, they were showing interest in you. They really like you. They heard about you and really want you. But also, you know, you have to be a licensed physical therapist. I do really love the moment where Josh is back in his downward spiral after he's sold all the musical equipment. He's back to beating off to OnlyFans. He goes to dump tissues. Another great moment of like good storytelling. He goes to dump tissues in the toilet and he sees this beautiful collage of him and his wife. And he goes, okay, that's it. Breaking the addiction, I'm going for a run again. I do also really like the moment where he falls and the wolf kind of sees him and then runs off. It's this idea that like, bad things are coming for you. You're not going on the right path. Josh also starts actively signing and encouraging the shitty invoice work that Ashley is doing because it allows him to get away with taking money, embezzling money from the company. I will say in Parasite, at least the scammers were actually like really good at what they did. At least, I mean, to be fair, the art teacher in Parasite, I remember that was kind of bullshit, but some of them were actually doing work and doing it fairly well. But in this show, Austin and his physiotherapy, like I was genuinely seeing there being like something really, really bad is going to happen. Someone's going to get hurt. And he's doing fuck all. Next, finally, Dr. Kim kills someone in surgery. So all the way over in Korea, he fucks up because he's got a hand trauma and kills someone. So next in episode 3, Austin meets Eunice. He starts training her. Basically straight away, there's some chemistry here. They clearly are vibing each other kind of like physically, but I will say Eunice is really intellectually above Austin. Like, you know what I mean? And she knows this from the jump. And I wouldn't say she's manipulating him or using him, but she's not particularly allured by him in a mental capacity. You know, I think she likes him. I do think she cares about him. I think she likes him enough, but I don't think she's in love with him the way Austin becomes in love with her. I think she kind of like likes him as a friend and she can lean on him a fair bit. He's friend zoned. I think there's kind of physically some chemistry there, but I think she's put off by how unintelligent he is, especially compared to her. You know, Eunice is very smart, and she's kind of what Ashley and Austin wish they were. You know, throughout this season, Ashley and Austin come off genuinely dumb and baffling at times, and yeah, Eunice really has her shit together for the most part. But I will say this scene where he's stretching her out, like there is some physical chemistry there, and I think Austin is taken aback because of this. I also like the way Lindsay, in a conversation with Josh, kind of talks down the embezzlement and says, you know, everyone pads their invoices here and there. I also like this moment where Ashley texts Lindsay and says that the post office is closed, and Josh is like yelling at her and like, that's why I gave it to her at noon. She's a fucking idiot. Like, it's good. It's good watching him having to deal with the shitty blackmail situation, but now he has to tolerate her because he's using her to embezzle money. Another great moment where it shows that Ashley and Austin are completely out of touch is when Ashley gets home and says, I need to get you working at the country club. It's the only way we stop each other from drifting apart. I spent 9 hours at work today, which pretty much is a normal day at work. Most people work 9 to 5. That's about 8 hours, 8.5 hours, right? If you're including travel time, they work at the same place. I mean, I do 12 to 13 hour days, and on my days off, I'm doing YouTube. Most people I know are doing 9-ish hours a day, and they're a while away. Like, this is a totally out of touch comment, a very privileged, strange thing to say. And it's like, especially given their circumstances, yeah, I found this a really telling line about their mindset and their mentality. Joshua and Lindsay are kind of on a high, you know, they're talking about wanting to try for a baby again. Next, we have this three-way conversation between Eunice, Austin, and Ashley where, you know, and then you're watching Austin be performatively like soft boy. Like, he keeps going like, can I please have the Mongolian beef, please? Like, just the delivery of it is so good. He's coming off so disingenuous throughout this conversation. It's over the top people pleasing because he's trying to impress Eunice and he thinks this is the best way to do it. Like, there's a genuine moment where he confuses Kim Jong-un as a member of BTS. Like, it's nuts. And then Ashley clearly cops wind of this and starts seeing there's like a chemistry there and a bond there and says, oh, you know, I never even really considered us a mixed race couple. It's like an awkward, clumsy thing to say. It's also a great line when Joshua and Lindsay meet the gay couple. They've opened the Airbnb and they talk about the paradox of choice. And then Josh comes back with the line, yeah, we're super pro-choice. Hilarious. And then when they get home, there's this great moment where it's either a true thing and it's really fucked up, or it's clear deflection and it's just an absurd way to go about it. But Ashley starts, you know, asking Austin, like, are you kind of into Eunice? And he says, like, and starts asking, you know, like, have you ever dated an Asian girl? And he says, like, ooh, no, it'd be like dating my mom, which is like crazy thing to say. And Ashley starts insisting that he gets a job at the country club, and he's really pushing back at this point. And to me, it felt like he doesn't want to work, but he also is intimidated by Ashley working. I think he also doesn't want to feel like Ashley got him the job. I think he's intimidated by Ashley. So he's seen there being like, oh, do you know how much trouble we could get in? And it's like, dude, you clearly don't care about trouble. You were engaging in blackmail 2 episodes ago. And he says, you know, there's other ways to get work without obstructing justice. I'm like, I'm not buying this from Austin, especially what we see later in the season. Next, clumsily, like, he's not even trying to rat on anyone because he doesn't even realize what he's holding or what information he has. Austin brings up to Eunice about the whole like $5,000 of miscellaneous payments, but he keeps calling it, oh, they're spending $5,000 on mist. Like, I think he thinks it's like morning mist or something. They're paying for it. It's like, there's mist everywhere. Do we really need it? And she's baffled by his stupidity. Like, she can genuinely not believe it, how dumb he's been. And that's why I think forms this sort of disconnect where they're both clearly like physically kind of into each other to an extent. I think she really values him as a friend and an ally, especially when shit hits the fan. But I think she doesn't respect him at all. He's a fucking dummy. She does start gassing him up for the videos he makes, and he seems to like have that sort of like emotional cheating moment where he's like, this is the one that really sees me for who I am. Now, Chairwoman Park starts discovering the miscellaneous payments and then realizes she can use these payments to kind of get him out of trouble. So he's like, I'll turn myself in, and she's like, no. Now, I will say I was really enjoying the way they were using Chairwoman Park and her story. I thought it was going to be 3 different levels of wealth going through the same sort of couple problems and like money issues to an extent and reputational issues, but I do feel like the way the 3 stories converge towards the end of the season gets a little clumsy, but at this point I was actually really enjoying all 3 storylines. I thought they were mirroring each other really well. There was some really interesting stuff going on. It was really interesting seeing the 3 different levels of these relationships and how they're all kind of revolving around the same sort of thing. Next, Joshua has a meeting with the chairwoman, and basically she calls him out straight away and says like, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. And by some sort of miracle, it seems like he's actually going to get away with it, right? And she's like, all right, well, I'm going to use that method. So all good. Just stop being a naughty boy. And then she makes him bow lower and lower and lower, which like at this point felt like a nice little slap on the wrist. I was like, that's a good get out, but it comes back to bite him later. I also love when Ashley is getting home, a nice little character detail, and Austin is listening to like Clarity, that song Clarity from like 2010s, like crazy song choice. Ashley at this point is also noticing he's like hiding text on his phone. And it's an interesting thing, right? Because he never properly cheats, but it's like he clearly wants to. He says as much, right? Like later on in the season, he starts saying that he's in love with her. He's emotionally in tune with her. Like he wants to be with her, right? And I don't think Eunice would ever go with him, but like he's sitting there in his like make-believe world being like, yeah, I can be with her. I can be with her. So it's like he's flipping over the phone, not because there's anything to hide, but because he wants there to be sign or hide. He knows in the future he would like for there to be sign or hide. So he doesn't want to give the game away. Now, Eunice offers to hire Austin as this like, you know, physical therapist for the country club. And when it's through her, he's actually really excited to do it. He's like really hyped about it. So you can see Ashley's kind of hurt by this. It's like, I was willing to do this dirty work for you, but now that she's encouraging it, you're going along with it. Like, yeah, you can see that there's a rift brewing. It's really well done. So then Lindsay cops a bunch of L's. She searches up how her situation with debt is going to go. Not well. Then she gets rejected by Desmond, Googles Desmond and sees he's with like some hot woman. It's like, it's a nightmare for her. And at this point, she starts taking plan B because she knows she's cooked. She knows Josh is cooked. She knows she knows Josh is cooked. She knows she's cooked. She knows that Airbnb isn't happening because he's had to confess to the money. So she's like, all right, no baby, and starts swallowing plan B again. It's really good storytelling. There's also this really great moment where Ashley is like kind of confused as to why they hired him. And she actually gets at this idea. She's like, I think maybe they're using you and maybe Josh to kind of like hide something sinister they're doing with the money. She's like smart here. It's interesting because Ashley consistently misreads at times. She misreads characters here and there, but in this moment, she's really putting a lot of the pieces together quite early. And Austin is like, how could you say that? Like, I got this job earnestly. Blah, 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 blah. He then admits to being attracted to Eunice and being drawn to their shared inheritance. And I feel like he was just adding, I don't know, like maybe you guys are welcome to disagree, but I feel like he was adding the shared inheritance thing just to create a point of difference that you can't really refute here. Like, I'm not really buying it, all right? Like, you see throughout this season, he kind of uses and manipulates this part of his cultural identity a fair bit. So when he initially said this, I was like, I'm not even sure I'm buying that. I think you just find her hot and you're just pointing this out because you're grasping at straws to give her something she can't really refute. He then starts bullshitting about needing Korean presence in his life, which just feels like total BS after what he said about his mum earlier in this episode. You know, like if I dated a Korean woman, it would be like dating my mom. Like, I guess both can be true, but I don't know. I just thought he was being a bit manipulative and snaky here. We have this great moment where Ashley opens up Instagram and she sees that Eunice still hasn't accepted her follow request. Nero's Doomsday starts playing. The music drops at the end of these episodes are absolutely wonderful. Like, absolutely wonderful. She jumps out of the car and rolls out down into the hill. Now, next, episode 4, this becomes one of my favorite episodes. There's really great stuff in episode 4. And like, to be fair, like the first 3 episodes were really wonderful too, but this is like almost a great standalone, this weird, surrealistic trip to the hospital. It's bringing in elements of like Beau is Afraid and I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It's like just walking the line. There's a lot of really surreal, strange stuff. Like when they first walk into the hospital, it's visceral and violent and it feels like a horror movie. And from there, it just escalates into weird, obscure tests of their relationship. I love this moment where she texts her dad's phone from Austin's phone and says like, hey dad, my phone died, and he doesn't even seem concerned. He's just like, oh, just like restart it, and like leaves her to it. They had this fantastic exchange. The writing in this episode was wonderful. This hilarious exchange about the super high deductible, where really well written scene where she thinks like a deductible means they have up to $5,000 to spend. He's like, no, we need to spend $5,000 before they start then giving us the discount. She's like, why would they call it a deductible? Really good scene. She says, I want a Gatorade to Austin, right? She's in pain because she's rolled into the water and she's fucked up her knee. So they're at the hospital and she's like, I'll have red or then I'll have blue. If I have to, I'll have purple, just no yellow. All right. Now he starts walking off, and important to note, he quotes to himself. He starts going, all right, red, blue, yellow, no purple. He misquotes it over and over and over again. Red, blue, yellow, no purple. And we know that it was yellow is the one she absolutely does not want. He then gets to the vending machine and it's all yellow. It's like Nightmare Scenario. It's all yellow, except there's like one red behind the yellow. And you kind of know where this is going. You're like, okay, he should buy two and grab the red. And then you watch as like either he's going to drink the red or something. But it's really good storytelling. So he buys the yellow and you're like, oh my God, is he just going to give you the yellow? But then he buys the red. And I'm like, oh, good on you. Like that was a nice thing. I'm like, okay, Austin's maybe coming back a bit. Then this incredibly hostile woman, and I think they almost made her cartoonishly hostile, so it's like there's no reason he needs to be this friendly or generous to her. Like, absolutely no reason. She's overly hostile, and she's like, oh, I can't get my card to work. I can't fucking do it. Like, and he's like, oh, well, do you want this yellow drink? You can have the yellow drink. And she's like, no, I want the red. And you're like, come on, there's no way. And then he comes back with the yellow. So you know he gave the only red drink to this woman. And she wants the red drink despite the fact that she was willing to use the card on the machine to buy a yellow drink. All right. He got the only red drink from the machine already in his hand. And she was trying to swipe to buy a yellow one. But now that she sees he has a red one, she wants the red one. And he buckles and he's like, sure. I'm like, what the hell? And then we see him come back and give a bunch of yellows out to people. So we don't know why exactly he did this. It's like, did he buy a bunch of more yellow drinks to try find another red one? I assume not. I assume what happened is it felt good to give her the drink. And I think he got a high off it and then went, I'm going to buy everyone drinks. And everyone's going to think I'm a really good person. And it's like the one person that needed the red drink, that told you she wanted the red drink, you didn't get the red drink for. And now you're trying to like feel like a good person by buying everyone else a yellow drink. Like, I guess it felt really good to him to like give things away and tell himself he's a good person. Now, Josh comes to the hospital to check on Ashley. Now, this is because Ashley had been texting Eunice, right? And then deleted the text. So then Eunice told Josh is here. And I will give credit to Josh. Based on the information he knows, I don't think he's the worst piece of shit ever in this whole exchange, all right? Based on what he knows. Now, unfortunately, he doesn't know that she has an ovarian cyst, and this might cost her the ability to have a child through his actions, but I think that's important to keep in mind. But in saying that, really interesting interaction. But before that, there's a great moment where Austin goes into the recently deleted because he suspects that she might have texted something or done something on his phone, and then smiles when he sees that she didn't text, and it's like, but you checked and you were really keen to like find out that she had done it. And now it's a good demonstration of like the fact that he doesn't really trust her and he's not really into this relationship. And to be fair, she had texted, but also she suspects that he's emotionally cheating, which he is to an extent, even if there's nothing in writing that is that bad. Like, he is into her. It's very messy stuff. Now, Josh tries to clean the slate with Ashley. He says he'll get her seen by a really great doctor as soon as possible. He just wants her to delete the backups. He's convinced that she has the backups, right? He is seeing her for the worst potential she has, the way she was seeing him as like the worst guy ever when he was offering her money. So he's seen there being like, there's no way you don't have backups. And she's genuinely baffled. She's like, I don't have backups. Like, I don't. Now, to be fair, she never expected Josh before this scene to give her access to a great doctor, but now he's put the offer on the table as long as she deletes the backup. But this is a moment where I'm like, just communicate. Just communicate. Like, of course he's seen there thinking you have a backup. Like, yes, he's been a bit paranoid, but like, why wouldn't you pull out your phone and be like, hey, like, you can go through my recently deleted, here's my Google Drive. Like, I'll show you. Like, I would really love if I could see this doctor. But she doesn't do this because at this point her cysts aren't flaring up, so she's not worried about that as much as it's her knee. And he similarly doesn't know it's that important, so he's like, all right, well, I guess you miss out. Josh then says to her, you've been acting like you do. And it's like, she actually hasn't been. She's been acting with confidence because she's trying to be good at her job, but he's been reading it as such. Again, an understandable reading, but a misread nonetheless. And this is just really wonderful writing where it's like you understand how every single character has got to this point. Ashley then says, "Oh, you tried to buy me. Like when you said claw me in request for the bear claw, that really scared me." I'm like, come on, Ash. And like maybe it did, but also like, I don't know, man. Like, drink some concrete. And yeah, at this point, I was like, just show him the phone. Just like show him the phone. Be like, look at my phone. It's reminding me of season 1 beef between Steven Yeun's character and Ali Wong's character, where it's like, we would rather self-destruct than just help each other even a little. It's a good moment. I will say at this point, I was feeling like this interaction between Ashley and Austin at the table before the doctor comes in. I was sort of seeing there being like, they almost feel like Coen Brothers characters, like Burn After Reading sort of characters, or the cops from Fargo, except they have like a darker nature to them, all right? Like they are a bit devious and mysterious. They are a bit devious and mischievous in comparison, you know? Now, the doctor comes out and says the ultrasound looks good, which ends up being an incorrect read, but we have this hilarious exchange where, you know, Ashley says that her pain's at a 9, but she assumes 5 is kind of neutral, the same way Letterboxd works. Like, as a Letterboxd nerd, like, this was very funny to me. You know, she says it's a scale of 1 to 10, and I assume 5 is normal, you know, like okay, so I guess 0 is Oppenheimer or something. It's funny. Now, Austin checks the text with Eunice. He calls her on the phone. Then he comes across a vending machine full of red Gatorade and chooses not to get her a red Gatorade. He could get her all the red Gatorade in the world. And it's interesting because later we do see that he gets her a red Gatorade, but in this moment, he's upset about the text, so he chooses not to. Good writing. Again. Now, Ashley gets rushed in for surgery because actually turns out these cysts have got really, really bad, and I think they've like twisted on themselves or something. We have this fantastic nightmare where they're offering her Hot Pockets, which she thought might have caused the cyst, and then she gets stabbed by Eunice. Now, in the dream, they said the operation itself actually went well, but when she wakes up, it turns out she actually had an ovary removed. It's pretty devastating. Like, even though Ashley's been a bit questionable here and there, like, I did really feel for her in this moment. Now, I want to throw it out to you guys. I assume this was Josh fucking with her, but at the same time, I'm wondering maybe he had a change of heart, because later on in the season, Lindsay does say like, oh, he mentioned he got the guy to help you out. So I'm not sure. And I also don't know if he realized how serious things got with the cyst. Like, I feel like there's some intentional sort of like hiding of the true nature here. Like, yes, on one hand, in that situation earlier in that fight, Josh could have just got her the helper. But again, Josh didn't know that the cysts were that serious. So it's like, if she was just here for a banged up knee after rolling down a hill and she's playing what seems like petty games to him, I sort of got it. But it seems way worse after that she's had to have an ovary removed. But yet you need to keep in mind, he doesn't know that the ovary's been removed. So I don't know, even if it is a taunt, would he have done the taunt if he knew about the ovary being removed? Because Lindsay didn't know about the ovary. Anyways, it's interesting writing. This isn't bad, messy writing. This is like, you can have multiple different interpretations by it. But this guy comes in and he's like, oh, I wish Josh called me sooner, but I'm here to help and make your experience more comfortable. Now, either Josh did have an earnest moment of like, I'll give them a break, whatever, I'll send the guy over, and it was too little too late, and she's pissed at him in general because she wants someone to be mad at, or Josh did this intentionally, whether or not he knew about the cyst or not. Let's even just say he thought it was because of the knee, to kind of mess with her a little and be like, see, this is the guy you could have had. Now, again, even if he did it to toy with her, I don't think he knew about how serious her medical problem was at this point. I do think maybe Josh wouldn't have done it if he knew how serious the medical problem was. But regardless, it doesn't land well. All right. And obviously, if you're Ashley in this moment and you've just had an ovary removed and it feels like this guy's fucking with you by sending this guy after all is said and done, you'd be like, fuck this guy. But where this leads to next is genuinely like devastating territory. Just thinking of Pickles going missing. Like, I can't. But yeah, this initial expression on Ashley, at first I was like, okay, I assume she's mad at him because it seems like he's taunting her. But then I was also like, maybe she's having a moment of like, oh, did he try to send him after all? But yeah, we see very quickly that she is actually mad. We have this wonderful scene where Ashley cries when Austin goes for a run, and then staring at all the ants as they come in and die. Now, Josh texts her and says, I heard you met David. You're welcome. So I assume it was a taunt. I do assume it was a taunt, but it's also like, we see the way he texts throughout the show where he is really cold and strange. Like, he texts earnest messages to Lindsay later in the season when he actually cares about her, but they're delivered in the same way. But yeah, I think it's probably a taunt, but I don't think he realized how serious it was. Maybe he did. Maybe there's a piece I'm missing, but this is how it landed to me initially. I was like, there might be some misreading here or some lack of understanding of the situation. But regardless, does land like a taunt, all right? And Ashley takes it as such. Like, yeah, to give Josh the benefit of the doubt, I don't think he realized that she wasn't able to have kids. I don't think he'd be rubbing in the taunt at that point, but he did it regardless, and Ashley is upset. Ashley breaks in the house to tear the family down. She's, fucking around with things. She's taking photos of the naughty miscellaneous checks. She puts blood from her vagina in the orange juice, which I assume is like medical cause blood from the ovarian cyst, right? She puts that in the orange juice, and then she leaves the house and the dog gets out, leading to a pretty shattering moment in this season. And I will say this, to me, is where the stakes should have peaked, in my opinion. I do think the show gets lost with itself towards the back end, but I do really think stuff like fucking with the orange juice and, more importantly, letting the dog out and then Ashley having to sit in the consequences of that and the guilt of that, this is really sticky, awful territory in a really good way, right? It's like, okay, like whether or not intentionally, right? Like even if Josh didn't know about my cysts, like his actions led to me not being able to have kids potentially. So I'm going to fuck with him, but now I killed his dog and now I feel worse than him. Oh my God. And like, this is to me, like absolutely the peak of the show. Really wonderful writing, and it's showing eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. And I do miss this. I will say, like, towards the back end of the show, I was sitting there being like, I kind of miss that vibe you had around episode 4, episode 5, but still, it still remains solid. But let's get into it. So episode 5. I love all these moments where everyone's fucking with everyone's like drinks and beverages, and they go to drink it, and then like God gets in the way, right? So in this moment, like he's about to drink it, and then Lindsay's like, stop drinking orange juice, it's full of sugar. So he puts it down. They notice that Burberry is missing, the dog Burberry. And I will say, another example, I mentioned it earlier, but they seem really united when they're trying to find the dog together. It's actually quite beautiful to see Josh and Lindsay working together. And once they get a lead about the dog, he then validates her about the fact that she scored like Childish Gambino repost your story as like a cool story, Of this moment where they get to the vet has a dash hound, but it's not their dash hound. He's like, look, like, this is like a vet that will kill animals, all right? So like, we're not a no-kill shelter, so like, you should probably take this. It's going to die, and like, best case scenario, like you have 2 dogs and he has a friend, but like if not, you have a replacement dog. Really well-written scene. I will say, hilarious moment where they take this new dog home while still looking for their old dog, and Lindsay's just looking at the dog crying. It's like the only kind of dark humor laugh you'll get out of this situation. Josh slams the door shut when he sees that it's open again with the new dog. He's not very happy. Now, they want to blame each other about the dog, which is very good. And I know the point here is that you shouldn't be playing the blame game, but I did double check the previous episode, and Josh did kiss Lindsay goodbye and say, hey, I'm going to work. And then she puts the dog away. And then that's the last time they saw the dog. Now, we know that Ashley is the one that let the dog out. But in terms of the information Lindsay and Josh have, Josh would be sitting there being like, you didn't check that the doors were closed, you left the door open, the dog's gone. But this fight, it's just bitter and mean, and they bring up really petty things, and they bring up like, I wanted to watch Bullet Train, you watched After Sun, and I fell asleep, and really funny. This season in particular is very obsessed with movies and cinema, and it's full of great references. But this argument was incredibly well written, really well lived in. Talking about COVID and him not being able to go to Top Gun or whatever, it's all really, really funny. And she's like, I knew I'd never live that down. And then after that, he shows up to work like an absolute madman. Next, we have this moment where Ashley realizes that she accidentally led to their dog getting out, and she tries to help Lindsay find the dog. Lindsay then says to Austin, I'll have her back by curfew, which is a really beautiful moment. Ashley says, one time I lost my keys and then they appeared out of nowhere. And like Lindsay looks at her like she's an absolute idiot, which is a really funny moment. Now, in this moment where Lindsay and Ashley start getting along right, Lindsay actually says like, oh, Josh said he sent David for you. Like, how did that go? So it seems like either Josh got home and earnestly was like, oh, I sent David, I changed my mind, I hope it went well. Or he did do it to fuck with Ashley, but like then kind of reframed it to his wife. Like, this seemed earnest from Lindsay, at least, right? Lindsay seemed to be like, oh, how did that go? I hope it was really good. I don't think she was being insincere here. So either Josh has been insincere or Ashley has misread the situation. I'm not entirely sure. Either it's trying to add to the guilt of Ashley or showing how Josh has been lying and manipulating both of them. There's this great moment where Lindsay sort of starts talking about how her marriage isn't perfect, and then Ashley says, does he make you do things you don't want to do financially? Which is a very direct question. She's obviously getting at the idea that there's no way Lindsay could have had any involvement in the whole miscellaneous sort of like embezzlement thing that was going on. And like, Lindsay reads Lindsay picks up on this as like, what a weirdly direct question. Then there's this great moment where Josh is trying to talk to his like kind of older gentleman friend that's at the country club, and says like, oh, I've changed, haven't I, since being with Lindsay? And he goes, yeah, like, you're better, man. And like, he clearly expected it to be the opposite. Now, I will say, absolutely love this scene where Lindsay is walking around in the nighttime looking for the dog. This is like incredibly surreal, wonderful writing. I thought this was so, so good. So she's out in the dark by herself. And by some miracle, also, important to note, beautiful nighttime cinematography. It's a Netflix show and nighttime doesn't look terrible. I really love something very bad is going to happen, but God, you literally had to have your entire house absolutely dim to be able to watch this show. Whereas this was like really good looking nighttime cinematography and I was still able to see it, which was nice. Anyway, she sees a coyote, all right? And she also sees Burberry. So she sees her dog. It's right there. She hasn't seen her dog for ages. Lindsay sees her dog. It's right there. And there's this coyote. The same coyote probably that was going to come for Josh earlier in the season. It's there and it starts attacking Burberry. And, she apologizes for taking the coyote's land, and then she picks up the coyote and bashes it to death. And like, I don't like animal cruelty, but I was like, yes, save Burberry. And she just misses it. All right. Burberry's been attacked. He's still alive. She gets Burberry to the vet. Burberry dies at the vet. But like, oh my God, just like totally, totally tragic. Like being that close, like, you would have preferred to find the body, would you not have? Like, absolutely awful for Lindsay. She had to see her dog get torn up, and she fights off the coyote with her bare hands and gets it to the vet, and still not enough. Like, really wonderful storytelling. And again, I wish this was like kind of the peak of the show. I do really feel like it runs away from itself briefly. We also find out that Josh called ahead for the best vet, Kemper or something. Sweet moment. They both apologize for leaving the door open, which is a sweet moment of unity again, but then they start talking about needing divorce. And then when Josh gets home, he tips out the glass of orange juice, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then he drinks directly from the jug. Kind of shows that Ashley and Austin spiritually are almost winning the beef right now. The dog's been eliminated. Like, if in terms of eye for an eye, they're winning this beef, but it's like, at what cost? Like, is this really worth it? So episode 6, we cut to 1 month later. Lindsay and Josh are like very amicably debating their divorce, or not even debating, right? They're just agreeing who gets what. Josh really cares about the new Burberry, right? He's chosen to name the dash hound Burberry again. Next, Ashley and Austin are discussing debt, and they owe $27,000. They start talking about like, oh, maybe we can cancel subscriptions to do the debt, which obviously isn't going to make a dent at all. And the only one they can cancel is a subscription to a finance app that's meant to help them. Next, Austin is letting Ashley go through his phone to re-earn the trust, which again, like I double checked, but it doesn't look like he was properly cheating. But like, obviously he told her that he had feelings for Eunice, so she's like going to check his phone, whatever. I will say these scenes between Eunice and Austin when they're like scoping out the fitness department, he comes off way more masculinity confident. You get what I mean? Like masculine confidence? Masculine with his confidence. You get what I mean? Like, not to lean into like typical stereotypes, whatever, but you get what I mean? He seems way more self-assured, way more macho, way more manly, way more assertive, like compared to when he's around Ashley. So maybe there is an aspect where he isn't being his true self around Ashley. And, maybe he finds Ashley's emotional needs a bit much and he cowers. But yeah, like really interesting telling sort of, and great performance from Charles Melton again. I will say Eunice is a lot smarter than him, like a lot smarter. He's a total moron. Then we have this great scene where Lindsay is trying to ask this random mom at like this birthday party questions about like divorce proceedings, and she won't answer the questions, which is like fine, all right? Lindsay's clearly shown up to ask you questions, fine, you don't need to answer questions. But then her kid keeps bashing Lindsay, and then this woman asked Lindsay to go on the bouncy castle with him. I'm like, okay, well, in that case, you can answer these questions. You're going to ask that of her after she's being bashed by your shitty little kid? Like, now Lindsay starts talking to Ashley about the IVF issues and starts helping her move up in society, I assume, because she wants to get the videotape, wants to get the tape to use it in the divorce. It's a really well done subplot, which, yes, doesn't really like fully eventuate. It's more a reason for them to be together and unite for a brief moment. Like, she kind of drops the whole video thing, but not in a way that feels unsatisfying. It just feels like life when things sort of pivot. I love the shot where Ash and Lindsay are hugging though, and then we see Josh noticing this and looking down the line, you know? Anyways, next, a professional athlete needs Austin's help for physiotherapy, but little does she know Austin's a complete fuckwit. He's also terrible at active listening. All these scenes of him being like over enthused it's really cringe. You know, he's yelling things out like turn that cold plunge into a gold plunge, if you know what I mean. It's rough. Like even Josh is like, there's this great moment where Austin's been getting to know Josh and Ashley's been getting to know Lindsay, and then Ashley and Austin start arguing with one another, but they're arguing through their opinions on Josh and Lindsay, you know, like, so they're clearly talking about each other, but talking about Josh and Lindsay. Good writing. Austin then says one of the only smart things he says throughout the season to Ashley, where he says, look, from the outside, we do look kind of bad, you know, like he outlines all the things they've done where they've blackmailed. I don't think he knows about the dog at this point, but he mentions the blackmail. He mentions the blackmail and a few other things. And then she starts kind of pretending to be in pain. So he'll go get her the heating pad and stuff, you know, like she clearly feels like she's losing him and he's kind of like, you know, rejecting parts that they used to bond over. So she's like, can you go get me a chamomile tea and stuff? I also love the scene where Austin and Josh are doing the physio session together and he keeps sweating on Joshua. I assume because he's not fit enough to be in physiotherapy. He keeps saying it's because of his high metabolism, but I think it's just like he's not used to doing all this movement. There's this great monologue from Josh after he gets high, and I do like the way the drug sequence was visualized. I really struggle with drug sequences in shows. I think normally they're the most boring part of the season if they do them, but I thought this one was really good. And then after that, you know, Josh monologues to Austin about constantly trying to one-up yourself, and that's just how life is. I think it's a very sort of like traditional masculine sort of thing to fall into, right? This idea of like burying yourself in your work, and not saying that women can't do it, but this feels like a very like generational thing of like, hey, this is what we all did. Don't make the same mistakes, young son sort of moment. But I do think there's a lot of kernels here that are actually worth talking about. It shows some emotional maturity from Josh. You know, he starts talking about like, you know, I have dynamics where it's like I go, oh, I'll help Troy and then maybe he'll help me back later. And I think this is like really earnest. Actually like reminded me of me when I was younger, you know, seeing that being like, oh, if I just earn enough good grace with people, they'll treat me well sort of thing. It's a very well written, again, like similar to season 1 when Stephen Yeun would talk about depression, or Ali Wong would talk about feeling isolated for like kind of her anger and how she can't really like resonate with anyone about it. All feels really like lived in, well-earned emotions. Like I think these writers have been very earnest with their own emotions or other people's emotions. Now, Lindsay and Ashley start playing Never Have I Ever. Lindsay mentions that she got pregnant once, but it didn't stick. Lindsay then says the baby would have been a band-aid for picking the wrong person. Now, Ashley starts talking about like, you know, I think the thing with the relationships is like oftentimes it's like you're picking the wrong person. Like they know the worst stuff about you, you know the worst stuff about them. It's a very naive approach to take. And I do kind of agree with Lindsay where she says, you know, I think a lot of people that say that are just people that are in denial about not wanting or expecting better from relationships. They tell that to themselves to cope, which is obviously what Ashley and Austin are doing with one another to an extent. And we see that they enter that dynamic at the end of the show, right? So it's like, I think there is some truth that Austin probably would have been better off with someone else and he didn't love her. And Ashley, it's probably with Austin, it's like, it's all she knows. Like, I think she does love Austin a lot, but I think Austin should have been the more grown-up one. I think Austin knew that he was stringing Ashley along, and instead now they're in this awful situation with a child at the end of the show, but we'll get there when we get there. Now, Whoosh starts trying to blackmail the chairwoman, and then the chairwoman instantly, like literally moments after being like, yeah, I'll give you whatever job you want. I'll give you the VP position. He walks outside, and the moment he walks outside, he gets hit by a car that she clearly arranged to hit him. Now, what do I like about this scene? I like this scene because it shows the difference in the ways that the super elite, the super wealthy are able to deal with any problem. All right? You know, like, look at how Josh and Lindsay really struggle to deal with this blackmail situation. They're playing with money that isn't theirs and jobs that aren't really theirs, and it's fucking over like other people, and you watch how messy it is, you know? And I think the ending shot of the entire season, right? This shot of the chairwoman, like almost like the leader of the ant colony, right? And then all these like other families and situations and people set up around, right? I think it's all the characters we watched throughout the season doing their own thing in this like surrealistic visual. I think it's suggesting that she's kind of like the ringleader. She's at the very top and they're all operating in her own world, right? And I think what it's getting at here in this moment, and where I think they should have kind of left it, is this idea that like she can just handle her problems like that. They always work out because she's got that wealth and that power. and that status. You just see how quickly she cleans up a situation that for these other couples has been a beef that's gone on for like 6 hours now. Anyways, episode 7, we have another time jump. This time it jumps 3 weeks later. Austin is beating off into a cup, to do IVF. Now, I will say this is a really great moment. We see that he looks genuinely proud of himself. Now, note this, all right? He looks genuinely proud of himself because he didn't look at like degrading visual imagery of women in those smutty magazines. He almost like pats himself on the back. He's like, I'm a good guy. And then he puts fucking hand sanitizer in the sperm sample. Evil, gaslighty, evil thing to do. If you don't want to have a baby with her, it's fine. Break up with her. That's completely fine. But to do what he's doing, like, dude, evil. And he'll sit there and be smug and all high and mighty and like act like he's better than everyone else. And, I'm just this nice soft guy. He's doing that. Dude, holy shit. And then she's sitting there being like, just keep your phone handy in case I have really good news about the baby or something. I'm like, oh, sweet. Now, Austin is talking to his mum later and talking about how he wants to kind of break up with Ashley. And then the mum says, you're afraid to hurt people. It's my fault because I hit you. If you don't leave now, I never will. Now, I will say, I think the writing was a little direct here. I know that's just how his mum is. All right. And I do know some of it was probably like maybe lost in translation or something, but did feel a little direct. Just a little... Given how subtle the show is, I'm wondering if this could have been communicated slightly better. But I will say, I guess he's kind of worried that maybe Ashley will blackmail him too or something. Maybe he fears her, but I think he's just too much of a wet mop to end the relationship. And that's why ultimately he ends up stuck in a relationship with Ashley for the rest of his life with this kid, and he'll probably beat the kid the same way his parents who didn't talk about things beat him, right? Or his mum beat him, right? He'll probably do the same thing because he bottles everything inside. He's doomed to repeat the same cycle, Ashley naively really loves Austin, in my opinion. I think she really does care about him and really loves him, and maybe not perfectly. Like maybe there are some things she misses and yeah, whatever. But my point being is like, I think she's too naive to know that he's not into her and not admit that to herself. Whereas he's like a dum-dum, but he knows he's not into her and he needs to leave. He knows he's in love with other people, but he won't. All these characters are very, very well written and very true to life. Anyways, next, Eunice tells the whole situation with the surgery complication to Austin, and Austin agrees to help her with the phone backup and everything. So I was sort of like, why would you tell him? He's a dum-dum, but I guess maybe the fact that he is dumb is the reason you tell him, he's not going to fuck you over. Now they're trying to download the phone, all right? And at this point I was like, you know what? Maybe it's getting a little convoluted and it's entering what season 1 did, where I was like, it's getting a little scattered with its characters. We're losing the central beef. We're going into something bigger and turning it into a crime show. But at this point I was like, you know what? Even if we're doing that, it feels a little more grounded, a little more earned, a little better set up. So I was enjoying it at this point, but I was like, can we go back to it? But in saying that, I was like, if we have to have it, it is a little better this season. I will say at this point, Ash is eating a lot on the plane, and it seems like Austin might be clearly worried that she's kind of pregnant, is at least how I took it. Now, earlier, Josh and Lindsay had a huge fight, and they mentioned After Sun. Now, Austin and Ashley talk about watching After Sun together, clearly like a comparison. Next, we had the moment where they're in the bathroom stall on the plane, and Austin and Eunice tell each other that, I don't know what I would do without you. Ash walks in on this, kind of loses it. Now, really great moment. Josh gets home and he sees that he's left the door open. He's like, I guess I left the door open, but at least the dog's there. But we actually see that someone's walking around in the background. Now, I will say, I do like the moment where Lindsay chooses to put gunk on Ashley's sort of drink, right? Because she overhears that Ashley is the one that led to the dog's death because Ashley and Austin are arguing. She overhears that. She puts toilet gunk, for lack of a better word, around the drink, gets her to drink it, and then says, I know you killed Burberry, you C-U-N-T. Anyways, the episode ends with Josh being abducted. Eunice, Lindsay, Austin, and Ashley, they're all together, and you kind of see that they're a bit cooked, all right? Because she's lying about not having the phone, says she left it somewhere, and they're like, okay, we're going to have to kill you. Now, episode 8, they're about to hang Josh, all right? This random henchman is about to hang Josh. They're writing this self-deletion note for him. They're pinning sort of the whoosh scam on him and lining that up with sort of the plastic surgery thing and his own embezzlement and basically pinning it all on him. It's decent writing, but it's just sort of I did miss how tight all this interpersonal stuff was. Now we're turning it into kind of crime show. It did feel a little jump the sharky here, especially with what we're doing over in Korea later in the episode. But at this point I was kind of going with it, but I was a little Kind of miss how grounded this was. The scaffolding collapses. Josh escapes by stabbing the guy, yada yada. Eunice gives Austin a USB, and then she like does some like action move where she like runs off, and then there's like conveniently a truck and she chimes onto the truck. This won't be the only moment of like physical convenience in this episode. Then Austin swallows a USB without like any covering at all, and it survives going down his stomach, going in the stomach acid, coming out the other end. I guess it can. I guess things can do that, but sure. Next, Josh goes to see Troy, and then Troy dobs to the cops about stealing with the dogs. Again, this is kind of reminding me of the finale of season 1, where it's like characters I don't care about as much are having big impacts on our core characters, and I kind of miss them being together, and it's getting a little crazy. It's getting a little like everything's crazy, and I'm like, all right, let's rein it back in. Thankfully, the end of this episode does, but this is where it was starting to like lose me a little, and I'm like, eh. Now, I will say this is a moment I like, which is Josh calling Lindsay, telling her that, you know, they're going to pin it on us, and you know, I love you and all this stuff. You're watching them come back together, Grant. Even in this really big moment, they're having this moment where like big drama, big high stakes, like terrible tragedy brings them back together. Now, Ashley starts apologizing to Austin at a certain point, and Austin says, look, I didn't cheat on you, but I'm not in love with you. It's a rough moment for Ashley. Her whole world's coming crashing down. He says, you went through my phone and you lied about it. You killed a dog and you lied about it. She then tells him about having the baby, and it's interesting because he's right about a lot of the stuff he's like pointing out, but it's like, he's also been the fucking worst throughout a lot of this show. And at this point, I was like, I don't know if she is lying about the baby or not, but I don't think she was because they have a baby later, so I assume it's the truth. He then like kind of like very much asserts like, I need to check in with the Eunice because I love her. Ashley comes back and says, no, but like, we're the true love. Like, I know all your shit and you know all my shit. And he kind of rejects that, which is good moment of writing. Now, Ashley now wants to extort the chairwoman. And this is where I'm like, okay, I'm starting to see some decent writing because it's like poetry, it rhymes. They're back in the same cycle, right? It's like you guys were actually really happy at the start of this show before all this antics. Like capitalism kind of chewed you up and spat you out as a couple. You know, you had high hopes and ambitions and you were kind of like lovely with one another. And then you went down this like silly little game and became really nasty, mean people and like polarized each other. But it's like, remember what you were like at the start? And now she's like, oh, let's do a bigger one. Let's blackmail let's blackmail this like gazillionaire. It's like, come on. Next, Austin can't find the USB. He thinks Ashley took it. Ashley says she didn't take it. Ends up she did take it. She gives it back to him. Anyways, next, Josh is in the car with the chairwoman's men, and then it turns into like kind of an action show. Like, did I like the plastic surgeon slipping him the key and him escaping? Yes, but like it feels like a different show. It does just feel like a different show. He manages to fight off 3 guys, punches this guy, runs off into Korea. It's like, it looks cool. It sounds cool. I just wish this felt like more of the DNA of the show from the jump. You know, it's like, I don't mind tonal shifts. I don't mind things escalating. But at this point, watching Josh like escape this situation, escape into Korea, I was just kind of like, let's get back to that sort of sticky interpersonal drama, you know? In a decent scene, the surgeon explains that like his relationship is falling apart to Lindsay, Austin, and Ashley. Says he's going to work with the authorities. Austin understands none of it. I do like the moment where Lindsay understands that he's saying arrest Park. It's a sweet moment. And then we have this like pretty insane action sequence. On one end, it's beautifully well filmed. It's really well choreographed. It feels like a throwback to sort of the Raid sort of violence, sort of like the violence in Old Boy and, you know, even like John Wicky sort of violence. But dare I say, I don't think it makes a bunch of sense to watch Ashley, Austin, and Lindsay in this sort of action scene. I know they're kind of doing that thing that honestly like a bad movie, Pretty Lethal, was doing, where it's like they're accidentally beating people up, like they're dodging things and then they're electrocuting themselves and then they're like, you know, going to vomit and then they like bang their own head and like it's just kind of like comical, but it's like it just kind of took me out of the show for a bit. It's like a really well done action scene. It looks good, it feels good, but it's not a step into surrealism. It's not like they were imagining this actually happened, and it's like, yes, technically the writers gave them enough like understandable outs of like, oh, they just dodged it by accident or like they slipped and then saved themselves. But it's like, I don't know, man. Like this episode kind of lost me a little. Anyways, they run off. Josh then sees them. He calls out to them. That gets them caught. And when they're locked up and they're talking about this like escape plan and what their whole plan's going to be and how they're going to get back at the chairwoman Park, I was just kind of like, I'm missing you guys looking for the dog. Like I'm missing like the dog missing. I'm missing like her working at the resort and things going wrong. Like I missed when this show was like a really well constructed version, like an even better version of like, I don't know, these usual Eat the Rich satires that aren't that good. Like I was really enjoying that. And now I'm just sort of like a little less interested. Like you've thrown my characters into what feels like a different show for a bit. So it does come back down to earth, but here it was losing me. Now, Lindsay and Josh agree to rat on the kids and unify briefly. And I do like it, all right? At the start of the show, I kind of predicted that the older couple would get along better than the younger couple. And it seems like they kind of do that by the ending of this show to an extent. It seems like that's what was happening here. Austin says to Ashley that like she doesn't love him, but I don't know, I can't disagree. I think like she does really love him. Maybe she has a weird idea of love. Like he points out like he says you've got an anxious attachment style because of your mom, because of your dad. It's like that all might be true. And maybe this is what she thinks love is, or maybe this isn't the best love out there for her, but I think she truly believes she is in love with him. And like, if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, you get what I mean? Like, I think it's a little strange to be like, oh, you only love me because of anxious attachment. It's like, how could you possibly know that? But at the same time, yeah, she can probably do better and she would be able to meet someone else if she wanted to, but she doesn't want to. And I mean, like, what else is love then, you know? But it's like a really, really great scene. It's like, I don't know why this show got so convoluted for a second. Now, next, Josh actually decides instead to confess to everything he's done to keep Lindsay safe. And also he chooses to spare the kids, chooses not to rat them in. It almost becomes, this season of Beef almost becomes in this moment, an interesting moment of like a family unit. You know, Josh and Lindsay couldn't have kids. And now in a weird way, like Ashley and Austin through this whole crazy situation, this is where I think the writing in this last episode is kind of good. It's almost become a family unit. He's stepping up as the father to save the family unit, save the children, and jump on the knife himself. I actually think it's a really good moment of writing. You know, and they couldn't have kids themselves. They never got the chance, and one of them passed away. Next, Ashley chucks Austin the USB through the keyhole, says, I'll always love you. So she'd take the USB. She knows that was the only thing keeping him around. She gives the USB away. And I will say, Austin gets out somehow. And it's like, if you're going to jump the shark and become a crime show, at least commit to like the stakes of this crime show. Like he just looks at the roof and climbs out of the roof, even though they're like completely secure and there are guards at the door. And then even if he gets out of the roof, like he manages to get off the building. I was just like, are we serious? Like I rewound because I was like, oh, it couldn't have been that easy. Like, did I miss something? But no, he like, it's implied he climbs out the roof. They don't show us because it would have looked stupid. And then he just gets out. I'm like, are we serious? What the hell? I do like the moment where he runs into the taxi, calls Eunice, says he's going to go to the police and help her, and he actually chooses to turn back around. It's an earnest moment. It's him doing the right thing, all right? I think he does love Eunice more than he loves Ashley, but he chooses to go back to Ashley because it's like, okay, that's kind of the right thing to do here out of loyalty. It's almost a sad moment for Austin if he hadn't pissed me off so much, where it's like he's kind of doing the right thing and going to go into a relationship that doesn't really serve him, but it was the right thing. But in saying that, it's not completely morally pure because he says, I love you to Eunice, and she doesn't really say it back properly. And I think he lets that sit for a second and realizes Eunice doesn't love him. And that's why he goes back. I think if she sounded more enthused, he would have gone after her, but he chooses to go back to Ashley. Now, Josh is being taken off to go to jail. Ashley is trying to be like, no, Josh didn't do it. And then, which I like, I do like. And then Lindsay runs after Josh, gives him a massive smooch. This is good stuff. This is good stuff. Despite how overzealous this finale went, like I do actually really like this scene. Now we jump to 8 years later. Ashley and Austin are now in the same setup as Josh and Lindsay. So they're opening this fundraiser at the same country club, right? Notably, they're worshipping Chairwoman Park. It's a great ending. They've become what they were pretending to hate in episode 1, where they're like, oh, the corporate man is being mean. We've seen them become part of the same cycle, if not worse. You know, I actually think Josh and Lindsay, in a weird way, almost came out the other side a little better, but now they're raising kids in this environment. They're not going to be able to have this like weird breakthrough. So this is a really Shakespearean tragic ending, you know, because I actually think weirdly Josh going to jail was kind of good for him, and Lindsay being separated was kind of good for her. And yeah, really good writing. You know, Ashley kind of comes off a bit uppity now, and Austin still doesn't share his feelings. Really good writing. We see Josh in jail. He's smuggling cigarettes to people. The inmate gives Josh information about, you know, around the time Lindsay stopped calling, it turns out she actually moved in with someone. He says, I know you're going out of here soon. Do you want the address? And he says, I'm good, which something we've known about Josh is he couldn't help but like poke the bear. And now he's saying, no, I'm good. I'm going to leave that. Now the news report confirms that, all this money laundering was pinned on him. Lindsay is watching Josh get out on her phone in the bathroom, showing she still cares for him. She still desires and yearns for him, but she's in a new life now, in a new relationship. Lindsay now has her own kid and husband. And Josh says into the TV, into the camera, he says something along the lines of like, I just hope the people out there are happy. And like, obviously he's trying to say that to Lindsay. Really beautiful. And with this crazy ending shot that does feel like straight out of a Park Chan-wook movie or something, really incredible storytelling. This moment where it's making this almost like top down, I don't know what to call it, like a diorama, but it's this display. And I think there was Josh there and Lindsay there. So it's obviously leaving the physical world, the real world of the show, to give us something more metaphorical, but where they're all sort of existing in their own pockets, but she's at the center of it all. They're all connected by her. Really good. It's like a brief shot too, so I might go back and like look at it, but yeah, really liked it. Anyways, overall, I'd probably give this season maybe an 8. For a while, it was like a 9 or a 10 out of 10. For a while, it was a 9 or a 10 out of 10, but that last episode was really rubbing against it. I do think it lost its way in the last 2 episodes a bit, but still, despite that, absolutely fantastic. Wonderful characters, wonderful writing, really enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed this video, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day. Thank you.